you for joining me. I hate making long introductions, but if you're at all familiar with this franchise, you should already be aware how much of a process this will be. I've played 7 Kingdom Hearts games so far, more are in production as we speak, and I do plan to review them all eventually. I've actually put off making this first review for a while now, simply trying to decide which order to review them in. Now I'm no stranger to video games, and much as I might enjoy them, I don't really consider myself to be a gamer, largely because the story is much more important to me than the gameplay. Kingdom Hearts has the most interesting, in-depth storyline I've ever seen in a game, or game series, but story-wise, the games weren't released chronologically. I want to tell this story as chronologically as possible, but I'm already breaking my own rule. Technically, Birth by Sleep comes first, but I plan to start with the first game and branch off from there. So, Kingdom Hearts starts off in a sort of fourth-wall-breaking dream where you, as Sora, the main character, are asked to choose between wielding a sword, shield, or magical staff. Once your weapon is chosen, you're asked to give up one of the remaining 2. Soon after, you'll be asked 3 questions about your fears, values, and life goals, and your combination of choices and answers will determine your game stats and leveling pace for the rest of the game. But I'll be totally honest, I've played this game many times and changed up my answers, and I've never noticed any major differences across my playthroughs. In this awakening stage, you're taught the basic gameplay, introduced to the enemy, and must defeat Darkseid, the first boss, and it's after all this that the story, the real reason I play this game, truly starts, and we're introduced to our 3 main characters. Sora, the one you play as, is probably the most simple, to start anyway. He's kind-hearted and laid back, apart from a slight rivalry with Riku. Sora goes with the flow. He and his 2 best friends, Riku and Kairi, are trying to get off their island home and see the world. It's pretty clear from the start that Riku is really the driving force behind this little adventure. He's a year older and just naturally much more intense than Sora. He's the one who's really concerned with finding his place and purpose in the world. Lastly, there's Kairi, who's a lot like Sora, only more playful. Alternatively, you could also describe Kairi as bratty or manipulative. It really depends on how you choose to see her character. I'll go with playful because I honestly believe the creators intended to show her in a positive light. It's worth noting that Kairi was not born on Destiny Islands and cannot remember her past before she just appeared there one day, but it'll be some time before this becomes relevant to the story. Meanwhile, at Disney Castle, King Mickey has disappeared, leaving behind a letter explaining that across the universe worlds are being consumed by darkness, and their only hope of survival is someone with a key. So Donald and Goofy mobilize to find the key-bearer and subsequently their king. Thankfully, back on Destiny Islands, the crazy raft plan is derailed by their world being swallowed up by darkness.
But how far could a raft take us?
The trio is separated, and Sora ends up in Traverse Town, a sort of in-between world that's been getting a lot of refugees lately. Sora runs into some Final Fantasy characters who explain that the strange weapon he's been wielding is called a Keyblade, and the little creatures who've been attacking him are the Heartless. This is also the first we hear of Ansem, a man who was studying the Heartless and has also disappeared. Coincidentally, Donald and Goofy also ended up in Traverse Town and eventually run into Sora. They team up, forming a new trio, and set off to find their friends. Thus begins a journey across an assortment of Disney worlds, and our heroes soon learn that their quest is a lot more complicated than simply finding their friends. An assortment of Disney villains have gathered to collect the 7 Princesses of Heart. Mostly this crew just serves as the bosses throughout the game. We soon learn that Kairi lost her heart the night their islands disappeared, and Riku has teamed up with the villains in an effort to save her. And this is where the differences between our 2 leads really start to shine. Riku starts to run into trouble the more he's influenced by the darkness in his heart and manipulated by Maleficent, but he's not a bad person. He's more driven and focused and willing to go to extremes to save his friend. Riku quickly starts to lose patience with Sora, who has the same intentions of saving Kairi, but is such a nice guy that he can't help getting sidetracked by other people's problems. It's just in his nature, and it's what makes him such a lovable character and perfect for his role as the hero for the side of the light. But I love what they did with Riku's character and what they did later on with the more proper villains. Sora's journey leads him to Maleficent's headquarters in Hollow Bastion, and it's at this point that I really started to fall in love with this series. I'd seen the name thrown around on the internet quite a bit, but when I first picked up a copy of Kingdom Hearts, I knew practically nothing about it. This game is a joint project between Disney and the people who made Final Fantasy. I've always been a huge Disney fan, and while I've yet to play a Final Fantasy game, their anime-esque style of animation definitely appealed to me. When I told the lovely cashier at GameStop how little I knew about the series, he kind of just paused and looked at me for a minute before saying very warily, "Yeah, some people get really into it." And there's a part of me that would love to go back and find this guy and tell him that I too have since become one of those raging Kingdom Hearts fangirls. Hollow Bastion is where these conflicts about light and darkness and friendship really start to come to a head, and I can remember when I first started to realize that this game was a lot deeper and darker than I'd originally thought. Sora defeats Maleficent only to discover that someone was manipulating her, and now that Riku has almost completely given into the darkness in his heart, he's become the perfect vessel for this game's real villain, Ansem. Well, okay, you find out later that he isn't really Ansem, but for the sake of this review, we'll call him Ansem. Ansem has been collecting the princesses. Oh yeah, remember Kairi? Turns out she was the princess of this world before it was taken over by darkness. Anyway, Ansem has been collecting the 7 princesses of Heart in order to open the door to Kingdom Hearts and gain unimaginable power. The 7 princesses of Heart are special because, unlike the rest of humanity, they don't have any darkness in their hearts. The only princess whose heart he still needs is Kairi. Throughout his journey, apparitions of Kairi kept appearing to Sora. He learns that the night they were all separated, Kairi's heart took refuge inside of his own, leaving her in a comatose state. In what is possibly the strongest scene in this whole game, Sora sacrifices himself to save Kairi, and Riku regains power over Ansem just long enough to allow her to escape. Having lost his heart, Sora turns into a Heartless himself, but it's not long before Heartless Sora catches up with Kairi, who recognizes him and is able to revive him with the light inside of her. So that's one friend down. Kairi is brought to Traverse Town, where she gives Sora her lucky charm and makes him promise to return to her, if only to bring her charm back. So Sora leaves Kairi in Traverse Town, prophesying much of her future in this series.
Well, let's go!
You can't go,
Why not?
because it's way too dangerous.
I can't help?
You'd kind of be in my way.
And then it's back to Hollow Bastion to rescue Riku. Your new Final Fantasy friends tell you that if you defeat Ansem, all the worlds that were consumed by the Heartless will be restored, but to get to him you have to go through the end of the world and the world terminus. So, basically you're in hell. Once you do manage to defeat Ansem, the door to the realm of darkness must be closed and locked, but it's a team effort, and ultimately Riku and King Mickey are trapped on the other side. Kairi is returned to Destiny Islands, and Sora, Donald, and Goofy are pretty much back where they started. The trio is reunited only to be separated again. It's the end of one journey, and the start of another. Okay, so I said I didn't have much to say in the way of gameplay and all the fun technical stuff, and I don't, but it wouldn't exactly be a game review without it. For one, this is the type of game that's a completionist's worst nightmare. There's a multitude of mini-games and things to collect and extra bosses to unlock. Some of them are fun, but I think the ability to warp from world to world is one of the greatest gifts we're given throughout the game. I mentioned that I loved the animation style, and in the description I'm going to link you to a much more in-depth analysis done by a guy who's actually qualified to talk about all the intricate steps in animating a professional work. There are a whole series of these videos by now, and he focuses on a lot of things that never would have crossed my mind while playing the game, so please, go check that out. But for now, in my unprofessional experience, let me just tell you that it's really nice. A lot of the cutscenes played out like a movie, and I really appreciate that with only a few exceptions, the voice actors didn't sound like they barely understood their lines. It's so clear that a lot of work went into this game, and I'm pleased with what they have to show for it. Of course, there are a few things I noticed while replaying Kingdom Hearts that caught my attention, having now played so many of the other games. One is the lack of any sort of theater mode where you can go and rewatch some of the cutscenes. While this isn't such a big deal given the existence of the internet and everything, it would still be a nice feature to have in the game itself. Though I'll be honest, this one isn't something I really missed until I played later games that did have theater modes. I play games for their stories, so I'm one of those people who actually enjoys watching the cutscenes. I don't, however, enjoy watching the same scenes over and over again. I was so unprepared the first time around. All I cared about was finding out what happened next in the story, so when I first rushed into Hollow Bastion, I was seriously underleveled. When you reach this world, there's this little confrontation between Sora and Riku, where Riku steals the Keyblade and mockingly leaves Sora with the wooden toy sword they used to play with as kids. And I'd forgotten over the years how big this scene was originally. In later games, there's Keyblades all over the place, but at this point, we'd been led to believe that Sora was the chosen one wielding the Keyblade. Anyway, Donald and Goofy's orders were to help the Keybearer, and that happens to be Riku now, so they leave, and without them you can't pilot the ship to go anywhere, so you're stuck in a few small sections of this world with a crappy sword that barely qualifies as a weapon, relying on the beast to protect you long enough to get back up to the castle to challenge Riku. Not the most effective way to level up. Needless to say, Riku kicked my ass repeatedly the first time around, and I watched that pre-battle cutscene where you earn your Keyblade back so many times that I can still recite most of it. In later games, you have the option to skip through the cutscenes if you so choose. This game only gives you the option to choose between normal and expert difficulty settings. I've never been the type of person who tries to kill themselves on expert modes just for the fun of it, and I was much more prepared this time around, so I didn't find it too hard, but I definitely still like the option to skip past something I've already seen a million times. So what should come next is me recommending this game to all of you who haven't already played it, but you might run into a problem there. Perhaps what frustrates me most about the Kingdom Hearts series is the sheer number of gaming consoles you need to have access to be able to play them all. The first one was released for the PlayStation 2. I know some of this has to be a logic thing because it's been almost 15 years now since Kingdom Hearts first came out. I get that they can't really expect their fans to hold on to a system that no one else is making games for anymore, but it's still aggravating for fans like me who don't really keep up with gaming trends otherwise. Seriously, the only reason I own a 3DS is so I could play Dream Drop Distance. And the games are so spread out that I suspect it's really just a money-making scheme. So I know that's likely to complicate things for those new to the series, and yet I'm going to suggest you check it out anyway. I know I've spoiled nearly the entire story over the course of this review, but given all that's happened since the release of this first game, believe me, this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you've made it this far, thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll return when I get around to reviewing all the other games. Thank you for watching.